This is Raj from Your Mom's Basement, and we're here with China Miéville, the author of Perdido Street Station, The Scar, Iron Council, and King Rat, and on Lun Dun now. So that's your newest book, right? On Lun Dun?
That's right, yeah. That just came out about a week ago or so, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what it's about?
Well, it's my first novel for younger readers. It was written, sort of as a sort of homage and inspired by classic children's fiction like Alice in Wonderland, and so it's on that level it's a fairly classic story of children effectively falling down a rabbit hole, pushing at the back of a wardrobe door and finding their way into a fantasy world, and just sort of having to find their way out again and defeat the monsters, and then I try and have some arguments with some classic ideas within that kind of fiction. So that's what it is.
So it's a bit of a subversive young adult book, maybe.
Well, I mean, I think you run the risk of sort of setting yourself up as far more grandiose than you mean to be if you say you're subverting a tradition. I mean, all I'll say is there are certain classic expectations and ideas in a lot of kind of quest narrative fiction and the ideas of destiny and so on, which are still very powerful, which are ideas as a reader, as a kid, I never liked. I always found quite alienating, so I was kind of wanting to kind of have a sort of debate with them, within a piece of fiction.
So you set out to write something that was for younger adults? It wasn't something that came up later on? No,
absolutely. I wanted to write a piece of fiction that, I remembered the way it felt to read those books when I was, 10, 11, 12. I remember the kind of impact that those books had on me that was just greater than, no matter how much I love a book now, it doesn't have the same kind of impact on me as those ones did. And I just really, I love the idea of trying to do that, trying to tap into that. So that's what I was always the plan.
Was it more difficult to move from a more adult, the last few books you did were more adult to something like this, or did it come very easy with you?
Well, it started off as an experiment. I knew I wanted to do it, and I kind of gave myself a couple of weeks to write, and then I sort of said I'm going to take stock and I'm going to feel, whether or not I think it's working, and it went well, and I was really pleased with it. So it wasn't as difficult as I had feared. I didn't know if it would be difficult or not, but I was anxious that I wouldn't be able to do it, and it went okay. And there wasn't that much of a difference. I kind of toned down some of the more baroque language, tried to make it a little bit clearer, not dumbed down, but just clearer, but apart from that, it wasn't too bad.
So do you think you'll be doing more of these in the future?
Oh, I'd love to, yeah. And also I did, the illustrations for this book, and I would very much like to do more sort of illustrated fiction, especially for younger readers. So, particularly, obviously, if the response is good, that's even more impetus. But I just really I loved writing it, so I'd like to do more.
Is drawing something that you've been doing for a long time now?
Yeah, I've always illustrated, but I've never done it sort of professionally. I've not put it out there. And what happened was, the publishers were talking. They said, we're gonna have this book illustrated, and so I kind of quite shyly said, well, if you're interested, I have some illustrations I did, because I didn't want it to look like a vanity project, and I was quite concerned that if they really hated the illustrations, they didn't feel like they couldn't say so, so I sort of showed them what I'd done and did a few more, and we decided to go with mine, but I was quite nervous about it.
Do you normally do sketches of like characters and settings of books that you're working on?
Yeah, I do. Although even more so with this one than with the previous books. But I've always, for Perdido Street Station, I did various frontispieces and so on, just for my own interest. Because this is the first time that I've actually put my pictures out there for sort of people to look at, and if the responses are good, if it continues to go well, then I would certainly do so again. I'd like to, and even in the adult fiction, I like little interspersed illustrations. I know they're not to everyone's taste, but I love them. Like Mervyn Peake's books have his own illustrations every so often, and it really excited me as a reader seeing those.
Have you ever thought about trying comics or an adaptation of some of your works at all?
Yeah, as an artist, I don't think I could do that, because I think I'm very, very slow. So even if people thought that that I was up to it in terms of quality, it would just take so long, you know. So, but I would love to do comics, certainly as a writer, and maybe if I can speed up a bit as an artist as well. Yeah.
So to go to back to your Baslag, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Those books. Do you have plans to go back to that world in the future?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I did the third one, Iron Council, I knew I was going to stop for a while, but I also knew I was going to come back. I wanted to finish, because although those books are not a trilogy, they're all standalone. They do have a certain kind of arc over the 3 books, and I wanted to make it that there was a kind of, you know, sort of a pause after that, so that those 3 have a kind of a unity. But I will definitely go back and do more, maybe in 2 or 3 books' time, and I suspect that I'll be kind of going back to that setting for the rest of my life, because it's a setting I really enjoy. So I don't want to turn into the Baslag machine, you know, but at the same time I certainly don't want to leave it alone.
And what have you started working on your next project already?
Yeah, I'm doing a novel at the moment, which is an adult novel, which is it's going well. I mean, it's not finished yet, but it's I'm hoping it'll be out maybe sort of in a year and a bit or something. So it's underway. I'm not going to say very much about it because I'm very superstitious about work that's in the pipeline.
Now, most of the stuff that you put out already has been, you know, more fantasy based. Do you have any interest in doing more, you know, science fiction type stuff?
No, definitely. And I have written science fiction stuff which I'm kind of working out, you know, how to go with it, where to go. But so I would like to do more kind of do a couple of pieces of sort of, you know, in inverted commas, straight science fiction. But I also think that the dividing lines between these subgenres are very loose, and I don't think that they're nearly as kind of cast in stone as some people seem to. So if people ask me what kind of stuff I write, I quite often say science fiction because it's just simpler, you know. So I kind of think everything, you know.
We do have elements of that, like with the like robots that were in.
Yeah, I mean, I don't believe, you know, I know a lot of people think there's a really kind of hard division between, you know, science fiction is based on real science and fantasy is based on magic. I think this is, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this program. I think it's plumb bullshit. I just don't think that's you know, there are simply so many counterexamples to that at a certain point you have to realize that the categories themselves don't work, you know. So you know, so much of the science in supposedly, you know, rigorous science fiction is so spurious. So much of the fantasy makes more sense, you know, and vice versa. I mean, this isn't a better or worse thing. It's just that you know, these subcategories are very unstable all the time. So if people say to me, "Do you write science fiction or fantasy?" I would tend to say yes.